Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Good evening. Welcome to a Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and today we have a very special segment dealing with our kids, the future, schools, education, the way we become competent, the way the world goes forward. But look at what's happening in recent years with the violence, the delinquency, the drugs, things that we never really saw in the magnitude that we're seeing. So today's show is going to be a very important one because we're going to be dealing with someone who's been in the education system for 35 years. Vast experience, and so we're going to start right into our show. And Buddha, if you can put him up on the screen for our viewers, I want to introduce Mr. Keith Shikowitz, and there you see him in the center, an anti-drug educator, born in Brooklyn, New York, and graduated in 1985 with a Bachelor of Science in Communications and Print Journalism from the universities of Geneseo and SUNY Brockport. After trying several professions and looking to what he wanted to do in his life, he initiated his career in teaching in the New York City school system in 1987. 10 years later, Keith got interested in the show Star Trek. There you see him in his Captain Kirk outfit. And in 2001, he joined an organization called Starfleet International with a ship club, the USS Justice. In 2009, he started his own ship club, the USS Abraham Lincoln, and has run his upstate club ever since. Mr. Shikowitz is a 35-year veteran with the New York City Department of Education, teaching social studies and law. He's also a humanitarian and represents the Foundation for a Drug-Free World, which is a nonprofit drug education program to educate our kids on the dangers of drugs. And Buddha, if we come on the screen, I want to bid a warm welcome to our guest tonight, Mr. Keith Shikowitz.
Hi, Al. Hey, Ben. Thank you.
No problem. Al and I is a good friend of ours, and he was here recently.
And I've been working with him all day on something for tomorrow.
So I was going to ask you, what actually captivated you and had you start into Star Trek?
Well, I'm a child of the space race. I was born in 1962. Watching, growing up, I remember watching the first moon landing, which took place a month and a half after Star Trek ended in 1969. And I just loved it. I mean, I always had a belief that there's life out there. Mathematically, it's impossible for this to be the only planet with what we would call intelligent life. There's over 3 million Earth-like planets out there in our galaxy alone. It's arrogant of us to think we're the only ones that can be intelligent.
It's very true. It's like really insular that sometimes we get in such a frame of mind that we think that we're the only ones in the universe, when scientifically, I was reading the other day, a fact that I thought was amazing, is that there's hundreds of billions of galaxies. Now, when you think about we're in the Milky Way galaxy and how small, not even a dust mote, the Earth is in that galaxy, and then we have hundreds of billions of those galaxies. So if you were to use logically, probably there's hundreds of billions of Earths out in the universe and, you know, the expanse. So, you know, so what did you think of Captain Kirk and the Enterprise and Spock?
It was great. I mean, to look back at it today with computer graphics that we have today, the special effects were hokey. I mean, but they used what they had available, and they turned normal, everyday household items into futuristic instruments. McCoy's medical tricorder was a modified salt shaker. In the episode Court Martial, his heart, the noise-reducing device was just an old microphone. It was just amazing what they did. And the imagination of the people that wrote the original Star Trek is what gave us our cell phones. They were using 3.5-inch discs on the Enterprise 20 years before the PC came out. They had DVDs in the next to last episode, All Our Tomorrows. It was just amazing what they did back then. And then when it came to Next Generation, that isolinear chips, that's our current flash drives. All this stuff. It's just amazing what they've done. And a lot of the NASA people were actually working with the advisors with Star Trek. So a lot of it, and back in the original series, they had the guns as lasers. Well, the lasers were coming out, so that's why they changed it to phasers, so it would be more sci-fi-ish and less real. So they had a lot more things they could do with it. In the episode where No Man Has Gone Before in the original series, they called it lithium. Well, lithium was real, so they changed it to dilithium, so they had more things they could do with it. They really adapted everything and really did everything, and it made it interesting for people.
Oh, it's amazing. It's like when you think about it, back in early on, before Star Trek, years earlier, you had Buck Rogers. And, you know, people used to laugh about it, and, you know, because it was science fiction. And lo and behold, here we went in rockets to the moon, out into space, now into Mars. And, you know, it leads me actually to the next question, which has nothing to do with a Star Trek or sci-fi, but has to do with time and how things can move forward and how they've changed. So in your 35 years as a teacher here in New York City, what have you seen has been changing over the years?
The way we teach. When I first started teaching, we had a lot more freedom to do what we wanted to do. The observations were based on how we got our message across. Did we get our message? Not even just how, but did we get our message across to the students? Did we achieve the goals that we had set for the lesson? Today, they have the Charlotte Danielson model, and she never intended to be a gospel and Bible. It was just best practices that she found over the years of dealing with stuff. But now you have to meet certain requirements. You have to do, you know, this in Danielson, that in Danielson, and there's more. It's less subjective, more objective. Okay, the principals and APs don't have as much freedom to deviate from anything. They have to follow a particular path on the observations. Kids, they've become, I mean, the picture you see there now is from a trip we took to Washington, D.C. with my old school, James Monroe High School. We took the juniors to D.C. every year. That's outside the White House. You know, these kids were respectful. They were, you know, they knew their, I don't want to say their place, but they knew their role in the school.
Right.
I mean, I didn't have kids threatening me the way I've had them over the past number of years. Kids cursing you out. Kids, you know, just doing things that you wouldn't, that if you or I would have done them, we'd have gotten our tails kicked when we got home.
Right.
For embarrassing our parents by doing that.
Right.
You know.
What happens nowadays? That's not what happens now, huh?
Nowadays, a lot of times the kids rule the roost because after the Lisa Steinberg case and the child abuse laws, I'm not saying they're bad, but a lot of parents don't know that normal parental discipline is still allowed under the law. You can spank your child. But the kids say, you hit me, I'm going to call ACS. And you have a lot of parents in New York City that are on government assistance and they're afraid to lose it. So the kids rule the roost. And they take that into the school in a lot of ways. I had a kid a couple of months ago. I was covering a class and the kid was acting up, and I was telling him to sit down, stay put. And the other teacher was in the room finally said to him, you know, stop it and sit down. He looks at me and says, you're lucky she was here. Excuse me? I don't think so. I immediately got on the phone with his parents. I got the number and called his parents. It's amazing that the way the freedom kids will take, because they know that a lot of times then nothing's going to happen to them.
Right. It's amazing, because you're right. I remember when I was in high school, and you know, I had respect, like you said. Is we were teenagers. We liked to experiment. We liked to have fun, but there was a respect that occurred, and it wasn't, you know, being subservient. It was just that, you know, in life, all of us have a role, like you said, and you know, in order to go forward, each person has to carry out whatever it is that they're doing. And eventually, they're going to get into the position one day, those kids will be a teacher like you, and then they're going to experiment what they've actually sown into the world, you know, with the seeds that they put out there. And then they'll see what they've created. It's amazing.
One of the most difficult things I found over the years is you're dealing with kids who live in the inner city and in the housing projects. And I've had kids that just won't do the work. Like, why are you doing the work? You're not going to graduate. A lot of kids don't think they're going to live long enough to graduate from high school because of all the drug battles that go on in their complexes and stuff, all the shootings and stuff. I mean, you know, it's just amazing the mindset that these kids have, because, and I try to explain to them that in order to get out of the situation, you need an education. And I tell them, unfortunately, people will, because of your racial makeup, you have to be twice as good as everybody else out there to get half as much. I said, it's not fair, it's not right, but even today, there's still people that look at what you are, not who you are, and what you've accomplished.
Right.
And I made some, I've really affected some students. I had one student who said to me, once, I was more of a father to him than his own father. I had another student, and this goes into the drug-free world thing. He came to my class, and it was my law class. This is what really teed me off about this. My law class, he walked in stoned. I could see his eyes, I could smell it. I was like, no. I took him out into the hallway. I read him the riot act, up one side and down the other. It was on TV when they all of a sudden like sober up real quick.
Right.
Well, that's what this kid did. He sobered. It was like he was like straight like that. I basically told him, if I ever see him come into class like that again, I will write it up. I'm make sure he's transferred to a school worse than the one he was in. Kid straightened his act out to the point where I was divorced and I had very little money to spare.
Right.
I saw potential in this kid. And I went to a friend of mine used to refurbish old computers. I bought this kid a computer. Wow. Keyboard, computer, mouse, the whole works. No printer, just, you know. I brought it to his house, and his mother, who had AIDS, she died from it a number of years later, was in tears. She was like, just couldn't believe that I had done that for him. I was instantly part of the family. Everything that happened with that family, we were invited to. My wife and I, when we were dating at the time, we spent a lot of time over there with them and, you know, the family. Number of barbecues and other assorted events. The kid's now making more money than me. He works for LinkedIn out in California. He came back to New York 5-6 years ago, and he took me out to dinner. Jack Deagle Steakhouse. Now, that is not a cheap place. The appetizer was $60, right. And everything's a la carte. There's nothing, no meals or anything. He picked up the bill. The bill was over $300. He used the money that his company had given him, and then he paid the rest of it out of his own pocket to thank me for doing what I did for him. And I still keep in touch with him. He considers me a parent. His parents were divorced. He lost his mother a number of years ago, but he still considers me like a father.
Well, what you did for him is amazing. You know, it shows the impact that we create when we do something positive. And, you know, sometimes I think we've lost sight of the fact of just some pragmatic, realistic, down-to-earth actions that we can take like you did. I mean, I got to tell you, what you did was amazing. And how does it feel now, years later, having seen the impact that you created there?
It feels great. I mean, you take a kid and you straighten him out to the point where he's a productive member of society. He's married, nice young lady. Living on college, he's making more money than I do. Even if I were to do overtime work, he's still making more money than me. But then you got kids who you wonder what they're thinking or how they're thinking. I mean, I had a kid, a junior, okay, say to me, question, how many states there were? I said, there's 50. She said, how are there 50? I said, 48 on the continent, Alaska and Hawaii. She says, Hawaii is a state? I'm like, yeah, it became a state in 1959 after Alaska. She said, how can Hawaii be a state? You can't drive to it. Excuse me. I mean, they throw these things at you and you just like, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. Had a kid a couple of years ago. I was talking about colonization in Africa and the 1884 Berlin Conference. I talked about how the Europeans went in and just sliced up Africa however they wanted to, regardless of tribal boundaries and stuff, and how they abused and enslaved the Africans in Africa. One girl raises her hand, and as God is my witness, she said this. She said, where was Obama during all of this? Like, what? It says 100 years before Obama was born, over 100, almost 100 years before Obama was born. Same lesson, after the holidays. I was right about this time.
Right.
Came back from the holidays, finishing up the lesson, and I had this map up, and I pointed out how Ethiopia was the only country that was not colonized in this time frame.
Right.
Same young lady looks up at me and says, I thought that was only a movie. She was in Zootopia.
Amazing.
It's like, you wonder where they think or how they think.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I was going to say something to interject something here, which has to do with my next question with the drugs. But one of the things that, you know, you get a lot with drug use is like a disassociation. So what happens is, instead of thinking coherently with different times, it's interesting that you had this student where the times were totally disrelated. There was no coherency to what they were saying.
Now, this wasn't drug related. This is just a situation where they think they're going to put things together and we're not going to notice it. Had a kid on the regions exam, global regions. French Revolution says the French Revolution began when Germany invaded France and stole all the tea. To show you how important a lot of these kids think school is, I was the test coordinator in my school at James Monroe Academy of Business and Law. I get a call from a student comes down and says, teacher says, I'm needed in one of the rooms. I go to the room. It's only about 9:45. The exam started at like 9:15. 9:45, 10 o'clock. Kids can't leave for an hour and a half. The first half of the exams, they can't leave until 10:45. This kid told me, he's got to go, he's got to leave, he's got to go. I'm like, why? So I got to go. I said, listen, you haven't even done the essays yet. You don't do the essays, you're not going to pass. But listen, I really have to get home. Listen, I said to the kid, I'm not going to mention his name, but I said to the kid, you have to stay. You can't leave for another hour anyway. You may as well just do the essays. And I said, he keeps saying how important it is when you get home. I said, was there an emergency or something? I said, what's so important? You got to get home.
Right.
He says, there's 3 games of the World Cup on television today. Excuse me? This is the days before everybody had VCRs. But it's like, excuse me, your life, your future's in the back, and you're worried about the World Cup? Thank you, FIFA. But it's not even a matter of drugs. It's a matter of priorities. It's a matter of trying to say, okay, take A, B, and C and throw them together and hope that we don't notice. Problem is, we're smarter than that. I'll have kids write, I've had kids write 2 pages on an essay on the region and get a 5 out of 5. I've had kids write 6 pages and get a 1 because they've written nothing and they repeated everything. Some of it might be drugs, but not that I'd be able to tell. What I'd be able to tell is just they don't pay 100% attention. They pick up, they remember little bits and pieces. They don't study before the exam, and they'll remember little bits and pieces and hope they can put it together and it makes sense.
Right. Well, how have you found, since we started to now in 2021, how has the drug scene changed? What are you seeing with the students and drugs?
Honestly, the drug scene, I haven't seen as much in the way of drugs in the schools. Although with the bail reform law that they passed a couple of years ago, you can sell drugs on school property and not get arrested for it.
No kidding.
And no bail. You get arrested, but there's no bail. You know, it's not good. I mean, the availability of drugs and the New York State Legislature approving the legalization of marijuana in New York doesn't help the situation. 4 of the 5 towns in Rockland County where we live have opted out of legalizing the sale of it in their towns. One of the villages in one of the towns has opted in. The one town that's still waiting, by the end of this year, they have to make a decision or they're automatically in. The biggest questions have been tax dollars and things like that. I mean, if other areas around Rockland County opt in, okay, someone's going to Orange County, get it, come back. There's nothing that anybody can do by transporting it from one county to another because it's legal in the whole state. You know, the availability of drugs, the fentanyl coming in over the southern border, all the other drugs coming in, cocaine, heroin, all these things are being made readily available. Ecstasy, you know, all these pills and stuff that kids are taking. And they don't realize what the damage they're doing to themselves.
Right.
When I was in junior high school, and even high school, there were some kids in the back of the bus, you know, what they called the heads who used to sit in the back of the bus, you know, the kids that were, you know, smoked cigarettes and, you know.
Right.
And I'd sit back there because I had friends. I mean, there were a lot of these people were my friends. There'd be joints going around. It never even was handed to me to hand to somebody else because they know I didn't touch the stuff. Okay? And I'm not saying I didn't experiment later on in college. We all did. I mean, we all have, you know, had, you know, times, but it's nothing that I really got into.
Right.
You know, we've all tried it, you know, things now and then. I'm not going to say I didn't. I did. There was one time it was hysterical, but I'm not. It's a story that it was hysterical with my roommates. But I've learned what is important in my life, and my wife, my sons, my career are what's important.
Right.
I got a lot of people that depend on me. Besides my family, direct family, I've got an extended family. I got my sci-fi club that we have about 30 members of my sci-fi club that depend on me as the leader of this group to be a leader.
You're a role model.
Yes.
Right.
To a lot of students too.
You're setting an example. Well, like you did for that student that you saved his life, basically.
We went to a retirement party for one of the teachers that was in my building. And some of the old students were there. And my wife could verify this. One of the students looked at me and said that, and a couple of them said, that they would not be where they are today if it wasn't for me.
It's a beautiful thing.
I was at a school a few years ago, and I came into the school in October. Now, these kids had 6 weeks of playtime. Now, you know what it's like trying to reel them in after 6 weeks of playtime?
A little difficult.
Very difficult, even for a veteran teacher. One of the kids at the end of the year gave me a card that said, I want to apologize for the way we treated you, and thank you for not giving up on us even when we gave up on ourselves and you. Surrender is not in my vocabulary. Never has been. Never will be. I fought every day with them, and I got a lot of them passed, some of them failed. But that's just the way it is. You learn through experience.
Right, exactly.
And a security guard at another school, my 30th year, learned what 30 years of experience can get you. And it was Halloween, was standing by the far side of the cafeteria when everybody's coming in.
Right.
There's a little wall there. We're standing there talking. And he's like, wow, it's going to be a nice, easy day today. A lot of kids are on a trip. A lot of kids didn't come in because it's Halloween. Other people said, no. What do you mean? I said, there's going to be a fight. He said, come on. What do you mean there's going to be a fight? There's nobody here to fight. I didn't make it from here to 3/4 way across the cafeteria. 2 kids were slugging it out. They came up, they separated the kids. And the funny thing was, the kids, when they found out, one of the kids said, why were you fighting? The one kid said, he insulted our country. Don't ask me. But the security guard said to the dean of the school I was in, he said, I don't know how, but he knew this was going to happen. He told me this was going to happen.
He had the instinct of all those years of experience, right?
I said, yes. And he said to me after, okay, how did you know? He said, the place was empty. I said, because that's why I knew it was going to happen. He said, what do you mean? Explain it. I said, when all the kids are here, they're in their little cliques. They don't mix.
Right.
When it's empty, they're all walking around, and they're going to clash.
Right.
He's like, I never thought of that.
Very interesting.
But
so I want to ask you a question because we're running towards the end of the show. So what inspired you to take this Drug-Free World program and start to implement it? What was it that you thought was worthwhile about that you decided to take your time? You're a busy guy. You're traveling a lot. You, actually, when we met at the event that Al was having for the scholarship, you told me about it, and it sounded like something we could get us to sink our teeth into. In Starfleet, it's a charitable organization. We do also charity work and that type of stuff. And this would be something that I spoke with my crew at our meeting that they want to get more information on, and we're going to post it on our website, on our Facebook page and stuff. And we're going to see about working with it. And also because I work with teenagers, I have a teenage son who's in high school, and with the way things are today and the prevalence of drugs out there, I don't worry about him and drugs. I don't worry about my oldest either with drugs. Right. But because I know they're smart kids, they know I'd kill them if they got involved with it. But there's just so much of it out there, and so many kids that get sucked into it through some of the lies that you had on your PSAs. They told me this would happen and that would happen, and I'd be better off, better this, better that, and marijuana won't lead to other drugs. And they're lies. Yes. And they're lies. Well, you know what? We've run to the end of the show. It's been a pleasure to have you, Keith. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. Absolutely, and I look forward. I know you're going to have a Star Trek reunion. I look forward to coming. Well, it's not a reunion. It's our holiday party that. And we're doing we upgraded our ship. We started out as a Galaxy class Type 2. We just got a newer model called the Prometheus class, and we're doing a whole commissioning for it that day as well. We have a holiday party after the holidays because during December, nobody can make a party. Well, there we go. And you know what? And for those of you watching, why don't you take a look and, like Mr. Shikowitz has done, see what you can do. Because it behooves all of us to create an environment where our kids, our neighbors' kids, our nephews, our nieces, they're going to be out in that environment. So the sooner we educate, the sooner they realize, and the world becomes a little bit safer. I think really, if you look at it, that's what we're after as parents, as uncles, as aunts, as grandparents. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you at our next episode of A Time for Truth show.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet